Nick, you don't like camping. We've gone camping together.
Yeah, you spoiled it for me.
Was that the one and only time you went camping?
No, no, I've been camping lots of
Yeah.
times. I just don't like camping. I don't know what it is. I went with my parents a lot as a kid. That was like summer vacation a lot. We would go camping. They didn't really take us on trips or anything. So we would go camping a lot, and it was okay. And then it just felt like a chore mostly. And then as an adult, I like to sleep on beds. You know, I like sitting around the campfire. That's fun, talking and having a beer, making s'mores or whatever it is. That's fun. I enjoy that. But then I, get tired. I go to bed and then I wake up in the morning and I'm like uncomfortable. I want to take a shower. I want to brush my teeth and I'm just laying on the ground, just hating life. And I guess that's what it boils down to.
I think you are just honest, and most people continue to fool themselves until they die about how much they like camping. I mean, maybe there are some people who can honestly say, I love every minute of it. But what you're describing is what I realize every time I go camping. But just like having a kid, there's something that happens in my brain where it's like you amnesia. And then the next time you go, you're like, oh, yeah, I forgot how bad this sucks. I mean, first of all, it's expensive
Yeah.
because you always have to replace something every time, no matter how often you go. Just getting the groceries for camping and the ice and the this and that. By the time you get there, you're like, this crappy meal is going to cost us more than a restaurant would. Plus,
Hmm.
I have to like cook it all next to a filthy picnic table and I'm always in a bad mood. I get up and I'm like, oh God, I have to cook breakfast. And I'm like trying to make eggs on our little camp stove and everything's just all over the place. And I'm like, oh my God, is there cross contamination happening? And you're right. It's uncomfortable on your back. The only good part is like kind of getting drunk by the fire
Yeah. So get a fire
and
pit in
like
your
going for a
backyard.
hike. Yeah. I still go and I still go because there are highlights and there are some camping experiences that I've loved. Like there's a campground on the Long Beach Peninsula. It's called Lamp Camp and it's right on the sand. So you like sleep and you can hear waves all night, which is very cool. So I'm willing to suffer for that kind of an experience, but it's still kind of a pain. I mean, they have a kitchen there, so you don't have to bring that kind of stuff and showers. So it's a little more comfortable. But you're still like, oh, there's bugs everywhere. I'm dirty. I just rolled over onto a rock.
Well, and then the other part of this equation is the fact it's not like we're talking about roughing it camping, right? Where you hike
Right.
out
Car
into the
camping.
wilderness
Yeah.
and you're
I've done a lot of that too.
I've never done that. And I've only done that once. And it was
Yeah.
in a way it was better in some ways.
Yeah.
And because when you at least you do that and you're not car camping, the other thing that stinks about car camping is the other people around you because you
Yeah.
can't control that. And so like last time we went camping last summer, this family of rednecks was like 50 feet from us. There was the whole family reunion, and they were up till 1 or 2 in the morning playing music. They were letting their children be up, like young children be up, and the kids are crying because they desperately want to go to bed, but mom and dad want to keep drinking. And the camp people keep coming around and saying, hey, knock it off, but they don't. And then they don't call the sheriff or whatever.
Yeah.
So you're just dealing with other people's baloney the whole time. Like, I don't want to hear loud country music when I'm out in the forest. I want to hear
I
the
mean, that kind of happened when you and I went camping. That was 15 years ago. I think it was 15 years ago. We were down in Beverly Beach, and
Mhm.
the sites are way too close together. And it was how many couples? Were there like three of us, three couples?
3 or 4. Yeah, I think it was
Four for
maybe
us.
even five.
And I was pregnant, but not telling anyone I was pregnant. So I was feeling like crap, right? And I couldn't have, whiskey
Same.
by the fire. And I was trying to sleep because I just felt awful. And the two people having sex in the tent near us all night. It was so loud and they were so obnoxious. And I was like, God, this is really bad. Um, I have gone on those backpacking trips though when I was young in my 20s where you like hike up for 7 hours and it's beautiful. And it is almost better because you have to be a minimalist and you don't have to pack a bunch of crap and your whole car's not full of stuff that you have to spend a day cleaning when you get home and this and that. And that's okay, but it's physically demanding. So I don't do that anymore. Too
Yeah.
old for it.
I just so Marissa, my wife, she has an annual camping trip with her lady friends, and one of them is a genius. So they all go to a campsite on the coast. Their one friend gets a hotel room nearby hangs out with them all day. When everyone packs up, she goes back to her hotel. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, this is the way to
I
do it.
love that. Yeah, that's really smart. I have gone glamping in a bunch of places too, where you stay in these beautiful like yurt type things or like canvas tents and everything's set up for you. And that's great, but it ends up costing more than a hotel. It's not
Yeah.
camping.
Yeah, it just depends, I guess, how much you really want to be outside versus like in a
Yeah.
city. Or I
Yeah.
would rather just get a nice hotel on the beach, walk on the beach, get some outdoor time that way, and then, you know,
Yep.
sleep comfortably and,
Have a shower.
poop on a toilet.
I refuse to crap in pit toilets at age 48. Never again.
Yeah, it's just God.
Disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to Film Swap, the podcast where we challenge each other to watch the movies that we've let slip through the cracks or purposely shoved into the cracks for whatever reasons. I'm Angelica Thornton.
And I'm Nick Voll, and today's movie is Brokeback Mountain.
You run them sheep off again if you don't quiet down.
No, I ain't queer.
Me neither.
You know, it could be like this, just like this always.
Okay, Brokeback Mountain is a 2005 film directed by Ang Lee. It takes place in 1963. I'm going to go through the plot here. I kind of put a lot in here because I just kind of want to refresh my memory on the whole film. So rodeo cowboy Jack Twist, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and ranch hand Ennis Del Mar, Heath Ledger, are hired by rancher Joe Aguirre, played by the crazy Randy Quaid, as sheep herders in Wyoming. One night on Brokeback Mountain, Jack makes a drunken pass at Ennis that is eventually reciprocated. Though Ennis marries his longtime sweetheart, Alma, played by Michelle Williams, and Jack marries fellow rodeo rider Anne Hathaway, the two men keep up their tortured and sporadic affair over the course of 20 years, mostly through quote-unquote fishing trips. On one visit, Jack and Ennis kiss, and Alma sees it. So Jack is visiting Ennis in Wyoming. Jack tries to convince Ennis to go away with him. He won't do it because he doesn't want to leave his family. He's haunted by a memory of his father showing him the body of a man who was killed for being a homosexual. At least we think that's a real memory. It's not very clear. Both of their marriages deteriorate. On their last fishing trip, they fight over their frustration. Ennis eventually receives a postcard, a return postcard, telling him that Jack is deceased. Jack's wife tells him it was a car tire exploding in his face and that he drowned in his own blood. He goes to Jack's parents' house in Wyoming because he wants to carry out Jack's final wish of spreading his ashes over Brokeback Mountain. Jack's father refuses to give him the remains, saying he's going to be buried in the family plot. He goes into Jack's bedroom, which is still his childhood bedroom. His mother allows him in there, and he finds their shirts together in the closet. They are the shirts that they were wearing when they got into a fight, and Ennis got bloody. The shirt that Ennis thought he lost, but apparently Jack took it as a memento. And Ennis cries. And then the last scene of the film is in Ennis's trailer. The shirts are reversed, with Ennis's on the outside, hanging on the inside of the closet next to a postcard of Brokeback Mountain. And Ennis says, "Jack, I swear." And it's that final shot, which looks like, I've always thought this, it looks like an Andrew Wyeth painting. It's perfect. In my opinion, one of the best endings in film history. It's very on the nose, obviously, with their shirts in the closet, trapped in the closet, but I think it works. Doesn't matter that it's too on the nose. I've heard that criticism. I think that scene in Jack's bedroom and then that final scene in Ennis's trailer, to me, were perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so this came out in 2005. Why hadn't you seen it?
That's a standard
Yeah.
reasons, right? It came
Yeah.
out. I wanted to see it. I didn't. I was working overnights at the time, so I wasn't going to a lot of movies. And then it just sort of slipped through the cracks. And then as time went by, we've talked a little bit about
Yeah.
this on the podcast in the past, but like sometimes I just have a hard time psyching myself up for a serious movie, and I knew this was going to be a heavy movie, so that's why. Nothing
And it
really
was very hyped. We've talked about that too. It's like almost like you want to avoid watching the film while it's getting so hyped up and just sort of wait and watch it on your own. Do you ever get that way? I'm like, I just want to do it on my own time without having to talk about it with other people constantly.
and also
Yeah.
it then frees you later from expectations.
Exactly.
You know, if everybody hypes this movie up, you think it's so easy to be disappointed even if the movie is excellent because it's not quite what
Right.
everybody said.
Yeah. So what did you think?
I thought it was great. I appreciated that it was slow. You know, you don't always want slow movies, but this movie needed to be slow to work. I felt like their relationship was earned, you know, because the movie took time to show them sort of bonding as friends before they connect. Um, I thought it did a great job of showing sort of the emotional isolation both guys felt and like the pressure they felt to be straight in 1960s Wyoming and Texas. I thought it was very sympathetic to the female characters too, because it wasn't just about them. It was about what their lives or what their lives meant to their spouses who now discover that what they're living is not true. So yeah, I thought it was very emotionally involving. It was a beautiful film. So yes, I liked it.
Me too. I would put this at definitely top 10 films for me. I just think the acting is incredible, the pacing is incredible, the directing, the cinematography, the music. I mean, there's nothing really I didn't like about this film. I watched it with an eye this time to say to find something that this could have used improvement, or I don't like this twist or whatever, and I really couldn't find anything. It's so beautiful and so heartbreaking. Not because it's such an important queer film, which it is, especially in 2004, 2005 when it was made and when it came out. I mean, this was huge. I just think it's a beautiful love story. I mean, you know, take away the social impact of this film, and it's still a beautiful love story because these actors and the writing and the directing is just so good. I have not read the Annie Proulx short story that this was based on, and I would like to go back and do that.
Yeah, I mean, I read a quote from her saying that she thinks it's the first time in film history that a writer's complete work managed to make it on the screen sort of unaltered. So that's kind of a fascinating idea because, you know, in the process from going from story to film, you know, there are different things, and somehow they managed to just make that short story into a movie, she believes, sort of unedited. So that's kind of an interesting concept to me.
Yeah, and I'm sure it helps that it's a short story and they're able to expand it into 2 hours and 15 minutes, right? I also read something though, which kind of like this says a lot about just men and like just how the film is perceived by straight men, especially. So several years after the film was released, Proulx said that she regretted writing the story. This was an article. She was still living in Wyoming at the time, in a town where she was like, I need to get out of here because the people here drive me crazy. She said that people have sent her too much fan fiction presenting alternative plots, and it's mostly straight white men who think they understand men better than her. You know, she said, it's a constant source of irritation in my private life. There are countless people out there who think the story is open range to explore their fantasies and to correct what they see as an unbearably disappointing story. They constantly send ghastly manuscripts and pornish rewrites of the story to me, expecting me to reply with praise and applause for fixing the story. They certainly don't get the message that if you can't fix it, you've got to stand it. Most of these fix-it tales have the character Ennis finding a husky boyfriend and living happily ever after, or discovering the character Jack is not really dead after all, or having the two men's children meet and marry, etc., etc. And I'm like, God, that underscores how many stupid people there are in this country.
Well, yeah, and also how many, so if these are straight white men, how much they're projecting themselves and their own repression into this film.
Yeah, it's really sad. And then I kind of started thinking about, after I watched it this most recent time, just like movie theaters, like pulling it at the last minute. There was a guy in Utah who I think,
Larry Miller, the owner of the
right,
Utah
that's right, the
Jazz,
Jazz.
just a terrible dude. But
Yeah, and he was like, "Oh, I found out what it was about 2 hours beforehand and pulled it." And I'm just like, "What?" I mean, imagine that happening now. I mean, it would happen in some places now, but this was 2004, and it just reminds you of how much I want to say how much progress we have made in almost 20 years.
but also how much backsliding there is now, because you look at the argument over trans rights and even
Right.
gay and lesbian marriages, and they're under attack again. I mean, it just how much never change never changes. I mean,
Right.
or how painful and slow change actually is, I guess. There's always going to be people trying to pull us back into the dark ages or whatever.
Yeah. And we're in Pride Month right now. And, there are places that are rolling things back, but none of the things happening right now would have been okay, even in 2004. So I do think, we've taken major steps forward, and you talk to any, LGBTQIA person, they'll, yeah, admit that. But it's almost like the people who were so scared of two men, having sex and falling in love in a film have like taken that, and now they've got the target is trans people or whoever else.
Because you always have to hate somebody when you're
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
Well, it's a fascinating year in movies as well, since we're sort of on this topic, because you also had Capote came out that year and was nominated for an Oscar, and about, Truman Capote, who was gay. And
Yep.
it's part of the film about his writing of In Cold Blood. You also had Transamerica, the Felicity Huffman film.
Yep.
Kind of an incredible year for a breakthrough, I guess,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
So let's talk a little bit about that year and like how I think Brokeback Mountain was robbed at the Oscars. So Brokeback Mountain was nominated for Best Picture, did not win Best Picture. It lost to Crash. I will never understand that. Crash is one of those movies that I've watched and I already forgot about it immediately. I wasn't a huge fan. It did win for Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Score. Heath Ledger was nominated for Best Actor. Jake Gyllenhaal for Best Supporting Actor, which I guess, I don't know.
Well, he dies partway through, so Ledger has more screen time. They probably nominated it that way, so they didn't split the vote.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle Williams for Best Supporting Actress, and they all lost. Ledger lost to Philip Seymour Hoffman, right, for Capote, and it's crazy that they're both dead now from drug overdoses. Gyllenhaal lost to George Clooney for Syriana, and Michelle Williams lost to Rachel Weisz for The Constant Gardener. And just, I haven't seen many of those films in a long time, but I just feel like I cannot believe Heath Ledger didn't get an Academy Award for this.
I know there's a lot to talk about with this. So, Best Actor, losing to Philip Seymour Hoffman, that's tough. But I don't think this was Philip Seymour Hoffman's best acting job either. So it's kind of like a tough year to lose. I was amazed Joaquin Phoenix didn't get it, because that was in the rush for all those biopics where everybody who played a famous dead musician won the Oscar for Best Actor. I think David Strathairn actually deserved it for Good Night and Good Luck. I thought he was incredible. But Heath Ledger's performance was fantastic. And I read too that the producers didn't originally think he was masculine enough to play this part. And I just think he was so perfect in playing that sort of guy who's so repressed, not just in his sexuality, but in life, that he can barely even muster words to say out loud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He can barely speak or express any emotion other than anger.
I had to turn closed captioning on as I was rewatching it this time, because I couldn't understand him a lot of points. But it was perfect. I wouldn't want his character played or voiced any other way. Or I'm just getting old and I'm deaf, because I do have to do that with a lot of TV shows now. I'm like, why am I turning closed captioning on more often? But there's an interesting backstory, right, to like this film being made. So Wikipedia, I looked it up. I didn't know this. Gus Van Sant attempted to make this. Hoping to cast Matt Damon, Joaquin Phoenix as Ennis and Jack. I also read somewhere else that who was it that almost played Jack? It was another actor.
Oh, yes, I can see his face, Josh Hartnett.
Yes, that's right. And that he pulled out because he had a conflict. But you know, other names considered: Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, Ryan Felipe, Josh Hartnett, as we mentioned. It was all scheduling conflicts, other movies. And when you think about it, Ed Norton was another one. I can't imagine this film with anyone but Jake Gyllenhaal, and of course, and I think Jake Gyllenhaal is incredible. I feel like he should have won an Oscar for this. It was so good. It was so good.
Yeah, the way he was able to be, he could kind of like you could see his character going back and forth playing these different roles. He just was so good at being like his true self with Ennis, but then being, you know, a little different with Anne Hathaway's character. And then when he was the salesman, you could see him really laying that on, selling the tractors or whatever. And you can see how his whole life is just basically telling people what they want to hear almost. And you think the real him is Ennis, but you don't really know. It's sort of ambiguous. But yeah, he was excellent in it. That mustache did a lot of work too.
Yeah, it did. You mentioned something earlier about how the women were portrayed, and I love that they weren't these like whiny bitches who like, you know, like they were crushed. And I just think it was such a sensitive way to show us the ripple effects of being closeted in 1960s Wyoming and Texas. And it was great. It did these women justice, and how it was devastating to them as well. Anne Hathaway was so good in that phone call.
Oh yeah. At the end when she's talking to Ennis about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And she wants him to know what happened, and, you know, and he knows exactly what happened. And that's such an amazing scene.
Yeah, and Michelle Williams was great as well. I mean, they play women who are just normal, nice women who, yeah, I think you're right. I think it could have been so easy to make them into these harpies or something that like gives the men the excuse. You know, it doesn't let the men off easy, which is
Right.
good. I mean, they're just normal human beings trying to live their lives, and they've been betrayed effectively, but in a way that they can't really escape easily.
Yeah, it had so many pivotal scenes, like when Alma sees them kissing and her reaction to that, her face was just perfect. And it's his frustration in that one scene where he's coming back into the house after she takes off and goes to work, probably because she doesn't want to be around him anymore. And he stops and he says to his daughters on the swings, "You girls need a push or something." It's like he's trying so hard to be who he thinks he's supposed to be, right? The husband, the dad, and it's just, you know, Jack keeps bubbling up to the surface. Cinematography wise, the one thing that just popped into my head, when Jack walks off into the darkness with the sex worker in Mexico, and then it just dissolves to the Thanksgiving turkey. That was amazing. So good.
Yeah, I mean, Ang Lee's direction here, I think, deserves some credit because it's in a lot of ways it's very understated at times, but then he does those like that intentional move to sort of juxtapose the two things. Again, he deserved that best director Oscar, and he got it. I think that I don't know, it's amazing to me just thinking about a guy, a Chinese man who just perfectly captures this spirit of the American West. It's amazing to me to think that someone could do that in a culture they don't quite fully understand and were raised in. And I was amazed that he was able to do such a great job with it. And the cinematography, obviously, as we talked about, was great. And the way they, even though they shot this in Canada, I mean, I've been to Wyoming lots of times. It felt like that part of the country.
Absolutely.
The little
The
town.
light, the towns, the blue light at the right point in the morning, everything was perfect.
And just the sense that like these are these little crappy towns that you can't escape, and that there isn't much there for people. There really isn't. I mean, you know, unless you are running one of these ranches, there's not a lot there. And the sense of desperation, because it's not just the sexuality, it's the hopelessness that what's Ennis going to do to make a life for himself. He lives in squalor for the most part. So
I
I think they did a great job of capturing that sense.
Yeah, and this is, relatively close to where Matthew Shepard was murdered in Wyoming for being gay, and you get that vibe.
Well, and
And
it's the same
when you
scenario that it's alluded to that Jack suffers.
right,
He opens up to the wrong person and he pays with his life.
right. And when Ennis asks Jack, do you ever get the feeling people are looking at you weird? I mean, he's paranoid for good reason. I was trying to figure out if that memory of his childhood was a story or if he really saw that. It was a little vague.
I didn't question it. It seemed to me that he probably saw it.
Yeah.
So that is one of the other things Ang Lee was able to kind of capture here, was like this sense of hopelessness in that area. I mean, it's not just their sexuality in this. It's, the lack of jobs that can provide any kind of real income for these guys. So it's all hanging over them. It's like, what is there to live for effectively, except for love and family?
It is why the American West has the highest suicide rates. Montana has the highest suicide rate in the country by a lot. And films like this kind of give us a glimpse into why. If you don't fit a specific mold, there's not a lot of opportunity, socioeconomic opportunity for you in your life. It's hard to leave. It's hard to escape.
Yeah. I mean, you see that's why small towns in our country are emptying out. There's nowhere to go, and even beyond, like we said, the sexual orientation thing. So I don't know. It's interesting though too, as bleak as this movie can be, there are these moments where you feel sort of like there is hope a little bit, that they could find each other and have even these few moments of happiness.
Yeah.
Or do you view this as sort of just a tragedy overall?
No, I think it's a beautiful love story. That's the way I look at it. It's tragic, but it's also beautiful. Like two people who love each other that much, regardless of whether you're straight or gay or whatever. I mean, that doesn't happen to everyone. And I think they just did such a great job of just showing us true love and a real relationship that absolutely crushes your heart and your soul when you lose it.
That's a very good way to put it. Yeah. Because I don't even think of this, you mentioned this is a major moment for queer cinema, which it certainly is, but I don't even think of it as a, quote unquote queer movie. It's just a movie about romance or love, I guess. I'd make the distinction because I feel like there are certain, queer cinema movies that are trying to prove some sort of point or make some sort of point. And I think that this one's more of a universal point. Like, yes, it's about two men falling in love, but it's not really about just that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved that the ambiguity too of Jack's mother and father knowing what their relationship was about, and the way that they both reacted to it. And it's like the mom, that's as much as she could give Ennis. You keep the shirt, you can see his room. That was really great.
You come back and see us again.
Yeah.
And the dad's sort of disdain with Jack in general, it kind of bleeds through. Yeah.
Yeah. And the father-in-law in Texas, of course.
But I don't know if we get the sense the father-in-law in Texas knows about that. I got the sense he didn't like him because he came from nothing and he impregnated his little princess, or you know what I mean?
And he didn't think he was masculine enough, which, when they're turning the TV off and on and he's like, every boy should watch football, and you just get, I don't know that he thought he was gay, but he's not the Texas boy that my daughter deserves.
Yeah. Big rough and tumble.
Yeah.
We should talk about this cast a little bit because we were watching this movie, and every time a new character pops in, I'm like, "Holy crap! It's so and so."
Yeah, there's David Harbour. There's Anna Faris. I forgot all these people were in this movie.
Yeah, there's Linda Cardellini, who's fantastic.
She's so good.
There was his daughter, as his adult or late teens daughter was
Yeah.
Kate Mara, who's great.
Totally forgot she was in this.
Yeah. It's kind of incredible. And then, I mean, honestly, the biggest one for me was Randy Quaid.
Ugh.
Like, this had to be his last major role, right?
I don't know. I honestly avoid any Randy Quaid news because he's such a just incredible, just crazy asshole. So I just yeah. And how perfect that he's playing this role, their homophobic boss.
Yeah, right.
It's probably him in real life. I mean, it is him.
He actually sued them after this because he was told it was a small, low budget film that had no chance of commercial success. And then when it got big, he felt like they should have paid him more money. And I'm like, in what world would this be considered a blockbuster? Like, this was a success in spite of what people thought it was going to be. You know what I mean?
Right. No one predicted this. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Like, how could they have paid him all this money when they didn't think they were going to make any money on it?
Exactly.
So looking up his film career, so 2005 was the last year he made anything real. He made The Ice Harvest that same year, which is kind of a fun movie. Not fun, but a good movie. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I haven't.
John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton pull a heist on Christmas Eve and get stuck in Wichita, Kansas because of a giant ice storm.
Oh, wow.
It's dark. It's good. Anyway, this was the last year he made anything real. So.
And isn't he living in Canada and like can't come back because of warrants for his arrest? He's been arrested several times, right?
Yeah, he hasn't paid his taxes. Yeah.
Yeah, tax evasion, like burglary, a bunch of weird stuff. He's a huge Trumper.
Yeah, well, his brother is a bit of that as well, but not quite as far. It's kind
but
of funny,
Randy
though.
Quaid seems like he suffers from, like, he's a conspiracy theorist. He seems like he's suffering from multiple mental health issues, like just based on his social media activity and some of the things he says.
Yeah, he's a good actor, but
yeah, that's sad. Makes me so sad to see Heath Ledger too. Just what a talent he is. And also I just kept thinking, man, I never noticed how much he looks like Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He looks so much like him. You got to pull a side-by-side photo of them up. They're so similar. And I don't know if they're aging the same way too, or they aged the same way, but man, they look like each other. But I just really miss him as an actor. He was so great.
I mean, I've only really seen him in two things, this and the Batman movie, which you haven't even seen, right?
No, I haven't seen Batman.
Oh, he's phenomenal in that movie. We got to put that on the list here. But let's go back from just a moment to the Oscars. I know people talk this to death, but I still find it amazing because I've got this list here of the nominations. And not only was Crash not the best movie that year, it was the worst of the nominated films by far.
What else was on the list?
Brokeback Mountain, Capote, Good Night and Good Luck, and Munich, which were all great movies. Crash is one of my least favorite movies of all time. So I'm a little biased. I remember that particular year for the Oscars, we went down to the Hollywood Theater. They had an event, a red carpet event, where you watch the Oscars on the big screen. You know, you come in on the red carpet, you have some drinks, you watch the Oscars. And I just remember this cascade of boos in the theater, the Hollywood Theater, when Crash won Best Picture, and just how pissed off everybody was.
Yeah, I think that will go down as one of the biggest what the hell moments in Oscar history. I don't know anyone who's crazy about Crash.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I feel like that, I mean, this is a whole side conversation, I suppose, but I feel like every year there's movies at the Oscars like that get nominated or honored in some way that are just totally gone from popular memory within a year. So
forgettable. Yeah.
And I mean, you can say that is maybe true of some of these other films as well, but Brokeback Mountain will be around forever. I think Good Night. Go ahead.
No, you go.
I think Good Night and Good Luck, I hope, will be around for a long time. It's still incredibly relevant. You know, it's about McCarthyism, and you see some of that political stuff happening again now. And, but Munich, I think, will be around for a long time. So Crash to me is just like, yeah, it's a nothing. It's like, what it reminds me of? There's a saying, we did a lot of politics in this particular podcast, but somebody said this about Donald Trump once, in that he's a poor person's idea of a rich person. He's a stupid person's idea of a smart person. I think Crash is a stupid person's idea of a smart film.
Yeah. It just seems so gimmicky to me and just, yeah, not good.
So enough Crash bashing.
Yeah, exactly. What I just pulled something up here in it because I was looking for the cast of Crash. Is Crash truly the worst Best Picture? Maybe.
Or like, what is the one that Cecil B. DeMille won? The circus one. That might be the worst one.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
What was there anything about Brokeback Mountain that you didn't like? Like that could have been better, do you think?
How violently they kissed each other. It just seems like they're gonna hurt each other. But I guess they were smashing their faces together so hard they almost broke Jake Gyllenhaal's nose. But no, that's a joke, obviously. But
Yeah.
no, I mean the whole movie worked. It was so smart and carefully put together. They really thought about every character's motivations and reason for being. I didn't feel like there were any wasted scenes.
And they just took the scenes that the scenes that ended up being controversial. I mean, I'll never understand the backlash and the, Rush Limbaugh, and it's not even worth bringing up because they don't, let's not even acknowledge all it.
Because it's not coming from a place of genuine concern. It's, yeah.
But I did think that the sex scenes and the love scenes were always just the right amount, just the perfect tone for where these men were in their lives, where they had been. And I don't know how you pull that off as a director so perfectly, or an actor, because I know they were both nervous about it. I mean, that's a tough role for two straight men to play.
And who were buddies too.
Yeah.
Which may or may not have helped. I don't know.
And Jake Gyllenhaal says a lot of people have assumed over the years that he's bi. And he's proud of it. He's like, I'm not saying I'm not bi. He's like, I wouldn't be afraid of it. I'm consider myself a heterosexual male, but thank you.
Acting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have no real criticisms of this film. Back to the original question here.
So you would definitely recommend this movie, I'm sure.
Yes, I would. I would recommend this movie. I don't know if I need to recommend this movie. I feel like
exactly.
Everybody knows this movie, but
I'm kind of recommend rewatching it.
I'm amazed it took me this long to see it.
Yeah, it's always nice to get a little gem like that, though. I meet people who've never seen like a certain sitcom that I love. What do you mean you've never seen Parks and Recreation? Do you know what a gift you have waiting for you? Like, I wish it were new to me. And this is one of those movies where if you're in the mood for this kind of a film, it's such a treasure. And if you haven't seen it in 15 years, go back and watch it. It's worth it.
Yeah, and I have a feeling on rewatch too, I'll gain some new insights to this film. It's definitely a rewatchable movie because a lot of this movie is the things that they're not saying. And sometimes that's hard to pick up the first time you watch it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. What are we watching next week?
Well, we're going to do a 180 here. We watched a serious film. I'm going to pick a fun film. We are going to watch Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, starring Kristen Wiig and Annie Mumolo. It's about two wacky Midwest ladies who go to a Florida resort on holiday and fall into love and a crazy adventure. It's fun.
I'm excited for this. This came out a couple of years ago, and I remember the trailer and thinking, oh, I got to watch that. And I never got around to it. So I'm pretty pumped up to see this.
Yeah, I think you'll like it. It's not like it's a deep movie, but it's a fun movie and you'll laugh a lot.
And I'm a huge fan of both of them. They're so funny.
Yeah. And then if you're unfamiliar with Anne Mumolo, she wrote Bridesmaids. She was in it as the airline passenger who freaks out about everything.
That's so good.
Yeah, I think you'll like it. It's an enjoyable movie.
Awesome.
If you like this podcast, make sure you follow us on our Facebook page. We're trying to make that thing happen. We just are busy people, and we didn't do an episode last week because I was in Hawaii on vacation. Went to Maui. It was great. So we're trying to keep these things up, but we got other stuff going on. But
we got 3 kids between us, and that's a lot of work. And I have a puppy. They're not Nick and Angelica's kids.
Don't tell our spouses.
And I have a puppy, so I basically have 3 kids myself. And she's been gone for 5 days. By the way, we have to pick her up today, and it's been like the before times. It's like when you get your first break when you have a newborn. You're like, oh God, freedom. But anyway, so we're busy, and we don't have a ton of time for the podcast / Facebook updates, but we're trying to be better about it.
Yeah. And hey, if you are enjoying the podcast too, while we're haranguing you, leave reviews on whatever service you use to listen to us, like Apple Podcasts or whatever. Just the more reviews we get, stars and actual reviews, it helps more people find it. We would like people to listen to this podcast. We have some great listeners, but we'd like some more, obviously.
Yeah. Kimberly Winter's our #1 fan. We love you, Kimberly. Spread the word.
Don't forget Carl Click, our #1 male fan.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
I had to, anyway. Angelica, this was a good thing. Thank you for suggesting this movie. I'm glad I finally saw it.
I'm so glad you liked it.
And I think, how should we end this? Angelica, I wish I could quit you.
That's perfect.
Film Swap is produced and hosted by Angelica Thornton and Nick Voll. You can watch or listen on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Follow Angelica on Twitter at Angelica KATU and follow Nick at Nick Voll. Share your thoughts on the films we discussed there, and we might just read them on the show. Music by John Michael Farley and Nick Voll.